My mother-in-law, Mil, keeps inviting my husband's ex to every family gathering, trying to prove he made the wrong choice by marrying me. But everything blew up when my husband had enough at her birthday party and decided to cut her off completely. For context, I'm 28F and have been married to my husband, Shawn, 28M, for 2 years. Though we've known each other since high school, we reconnected after college and started dating a few years ago. Before me, Shawn had been in a long-term relationship with Diane, his high school sweetheart. She ended things because she wanted to explore life, which, in reality, meant dating around while keeping Shawn as a backup. They remained friends after the breakup, although Shawn gradually distanced himself. The problem is Shawn's mom, Sharon, 49F, absolutely adored Diane. Even after they broke up, she continued inviting Diane to family events. Despite Shawn's repeated requests for his mom to stop, Sharon insisted that she and Diane were still close and saw no issue with her attending. The first time I met Shawn's family was for Christmas 4 years ago. Diane was there, too, and wasted no time making snide comments about me, picking apart my appearance and joking in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. Sharon, instead of stepping in, actually asked if I had a problem with Diane's jokes, clearly siding with her. I stood my ground and played it off, refusing to give them the satisfaction of thinking they'd gotten under my skin. For the next few years, every single family gathering involved Diane. Each time, she'd make backhanded compliments or bring up her past with Shawn, trying to make things awkward. Sharon would constantly hint that Diane was the better choice for Shawn, but I chose to stay calm. Shawn reassured me that he had no feelings for Diane and that I was the only one who mattered to him, so I put up with it for his sake. But it all came to a head at Sharon's 49th birthday party a few days ago. Shawn didn't want to attend, preferring to go to a friend's engagement party, but Sharon guilt-tripped him into coming to her event instead. As usual, Diane was there, overdressed and acting like she was still part of the family. When it was time for Sharon to cut the cake, there were actually 2 cakes, one for her birthday and one labeled Happy Almost Anniversary. No one knew what it meant until Diane grabbed Shawn's arm, dragged him to the front, and started talking about how 10 years ago, on Sharon's birthday, Shawn had given her a promise ring. She was still wearing that ring, proudly showing it off to everyone, while Sharon cheered them on, as if they were still a couple. The whole scene was absurd. Diane even hugged Shawn, though he stood stiff and unresponsive. It was like they were trying to relive a relationship that was long dead, and I could see the discomfort on Shawn's face. Finally, Shawn had enough. He calmly pulled away from Diane, turned to his mom, and announced that he was done. He told Sharon that she had crossed the line for the last time by disrespecting our marriage and that from now on, she and Diane were no longer welcome in our lives. The entire room fell silent, and without waiting for a response, Shawn and I walked out. Since then, Shawn has cut off all contact with his mom and Diane. It was a long time coming, but I'm relieved that he finally stood up for us and set boundaries. It's not easy, but we're moving forward together, free from their toxic behavior. Since no one knew how to respond to the absurd situation, Diane kept rambling, seriously claiming that Shawn was her almost husband and Sharon her almost mother-in-law. She went on about how this was their almost anniversary, as if we hadn't grasped the ridiculousness of the situation already. Then Sharon, with a bizarre sense of occasion, cut the so-called anniversary cake and fed a slice to Diane. She turned to feed Shawn, but he snapped back to reality just in time and backed away when she held the cake near his mouth. Sharon looked surprised, asking, "What's wrong?" And that's when everything exploded. Shawn, who rarely gets angry, lost it. He finally unleashed years of frustration, shouting at both Sharon and Diane. He called them shallow, self-centered, and delusional, and said he was ashamed to have ever been with Diane, and even more ashamed to be related to Sharon. He even declared that they were the trashiest women he'd ever known. I was shocked. Shawn is usually calm and composed, but this time, Sharon and Diane had pushed him past his breaking point. After his outburst, Shawn stormed out of the party with me in tow. We caught a cab to his coworker's engagement party, where I tried to talk to him, but he was visibly upset and told me he didn't want to discuss it. Once we got to the party and Shawn was around his friends, his mood improved, and I was relieved to see him relax. By the time we got home, he seemed in a better state of mind, so I decided to bring up the events of the day, thinking he'd want to talk about it. But instead of agreeing with me, Shawn turned the conversation around, saying that while Diane and Sharon's behavior was unacceptable, I wasn't innocent either. He pointed out that for years, I'd insisted on keeping quiet, letting Sharon and Diane get away with their behavior because I was determined to prove that I didn't care. In doing so, I ignored how much it was affecting him, while I'd been locked in a silent battle with them, trying to act unfazed. Shawn had been suffering, and no one, not even me, bothered to ask how he felt about it. He expected more understanding from me, and in that moment, I realized he was right. I had been so focused on my own feelings that I failed to see how much this situation had hurt him too. Update 1. I apologized to Shawn today after spending a lot of time thinking about what he said. I realized he was right. I'd been so busy pretending Diane and Sharon's behavior didn't bother me that I never stopped to consider how much it was affecting Shawn. For years, I put my pride above his well-being, pushing him to stay silent while his ex and mother repeatedly crossed the line. I'd forced him into a situation where he had to bottle up his feelings, all because I wanted to win some petty game. Shawn had been distant since the day of the party, and I was pretending not to care. It's something I've always done, bottling up my emotions and acting like things don't affect me, even when they do. It's an unhealthy coping mechanism, and I realize now that it's not fair to Shawn or to our marriage. I needed to make things right. Today, I skipped work, bought dinner from Shawn's favorite restaurant, and even got a chocolate cake with "I'm sorry" written on it. When he came home, he was surprised by the setup. Within 15 minutes of arriving, we were having a tearful reconciliation. I explained my behavior, how I constantly felt the need to appear unfazed and nonchalant, even when things were really getting to me. Shawn understood, and although he apologized for being harsh, I don't think he needed to. He's a good man, and I'm lucky to have him. After dinner, we finally talked about Sharon and Diane. Sharon had been bombarding Shawn with texts, asking him to apologize to Diane, who was supposedly heartbroken over the way Shawn had treated her. I could barely keep from rolling my eyes as I read her messages. Sharon tried to pass off the whole, almost anniversary, cake as a harmless joke, but I wasn't buying it. Diane had crossed so many boundaries, and it was beyond disrespectful to pull a stunt like that, especially considering Shawn is a married man now. They did this on purpose. Sharon and Diane wanted to humiliate me at the party, so trying to dismiss everything by calling it a joke and saying Shawn overreacted was ridiculous. The nerve they had to suggest that we were the ones who went too far and disrespected them with Shawn's outburst was just laughable. But Shawn wasn't having it. He'd already been ignoring her texts, and after seeing what she had sent, we both decided to go no contact. Enough was enough, and we wanted no part in her nonsense anymore. Update 2. 3 days ago, Shawn and I blocked Sharon and Diane on all our social media, and Shawn told his dad he didn't want to talk to his mother anymore. His dad respected that but made it clear he wouldn't get involved. He loves his wife and knows he can't leave her, so he's staying out of this mess, just like he has for the past few years. I don't agree with how my father-in-law is handling it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Things had been relatively calm for 2 days, but today, Shawn suddenly called me, saying he was rushing to the hospital because his mom had supposedly fallen down the stairs and fractured her leg. His maternal uncle had informed him, and we both headed to the hospital as soon as we could. When we arrived at the hospital, Sharon stopped us in the parking lot. She was fine, there was no accident, no injury. Sharon and Diane had lured us there just to get Shawn's attention since he blocked them everywhere. They hadn't expected me to show up, but they ignored me and went on talking to Shawn like nothing had happened. Diane tried to explain that what she did at the party was just a prank, and Sharon backed her up. Shawn let them speak for a minute, then calmly told them both to get lost. The look on their faces was priceless. He turned and walked away with me, but before we could get into our cars, Sharon started screaming at us. We didn't stick around to hear her rant, though I'm sure she was cursing us out. It didn't matter, she'd manipulated her way into seeing Shawn again, and it was honestly pathetic. Shawn went home to decompress, but I had to head back to work. While I was at the office, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Sharon, and she screamed at me for 15 straight seconds before I hung up. I hadn't been expecting the call, so I picked up, but it was just a barrage of swear words. I have no idea why she was mad at me. I wasn't the one who pushed her son to this point. She did. Anyway, I blocked her and tried to carry on with my day. Later, when I got home around 6 o'clock, Shawn told me he'd also blocked the rest of his family who were close to his mother, including his uncle. since it was clear they'd go to any lengths to get him to forgive Sharon and Diane. Right now, all we can do is keep them blocked. They aren't threatening us or stalking us enough for a restraining order, so we're just trying to distance ourselves as much as possible. Shawn called his dad to explain what happened at the hospital, but his father still refuses to intervene. That's his choice, and Shawn loves him, so I'm staying out of it. But personally, I don't think his father's behavior is what a good dad should be. At the very least, he could stand up for his son and confront Sharon, but he won't even do that. Shawn loves him, so I'm respecting that relationship, but I've kept my mouth shut long enough. The whole family, aside from Shawn, is selfish and clueless, and I don't understand how someone as good as Shawn came from a family like this. Update 3. It's been a week since my last update. Yesterday, Shawn and I decided to file for a restraining order against Sharon and Diane because of what they did, or tried to do, to me. A few days ago, on Thursday, I was coming home from work. I usually stop by a coffee shop near my office to treat myself to a frappuccino. As soon as I walked in, I saw Sharon and Diane sitting there, waiting for me. Before I could react, they both threw their coffees in my face, and Diane even smeared whipped cream from her cup into my hair. I was in shock. I just stood there frozen until the baristas rushed over to help me clean up. They were incredibly kind, abandoning their duties to assist me, and even the other customers waited patiently while I wiped myself off. My clothes were ruined, sticky and stained, and my hair was a mess, but at least I was somewhat cleaned up by the time I left. A customer offered to call the cops, which I did. I pressed charges, but since this was a misdemeanor and didn't cause any serious harm, Sharon and Diane only got a fine and a mark on their records. Even though it wasn't much, pressing charges has helped build a case for the restraining order. Shawn initially wanted to post about this on social media to warn others about his mom and Diane, but when he saw how shaken I was, he dropped the idea. Honestly, this incident rattled me. It may sound silly, but I realized how easily things could have been worse. They knew my routine from my social media, and they knew where I lived. It could have escalated into something far more dangerous. With this in mind, Shawn and I are officially moving. We've had a good financial year, so we were already considering it, but after this incident, it's a done deal. We've also been thinking about starting a family, and soon we'll begin trying for a baby, but Sharon and Diane will never meet our children. We've even cut off my father-in-law after he refused to intervene. Even after the coffee incident, Shawn had a huge fight with him and decided to go no contact with him too. I feel a sense of relief, knowing I'll never have to deal with these people again.